Hello, on this video I'm going to talk about the C# delegates. The 3 steps to create that, which is declare delegates, then set a target, and then finally invoke the delegates. And then after that, I'm also going to talk about the multicast and also passing the delegate as a parameter. Alright, and for that I'm going to open the Visual Studio and then I'm going to create a new project, a console application. Alright, so in order for us to have a delegates, we need 3 things. We need to declare delegates, then set the target method, and then invoke a delegate. So first, let's work on the declare delegates. So declare delegate has to be outside the method. So I'm going to create right here in the top. Alright, so this is how you declare delegates. So let's go over here how I did it. So the first I put it public and then the keyword delegates and then void, because these delegates will call functions that don't return anything. So the signature of these delegates has to be the same signature as the method. So the method that these delegates will invoke is a method that returns nothing and receives a string as a parameter. So if you want to call a method that has a different signature, then you'd change here for, let's say, a integer returning type, and let's say you want receive also a integer as a parameter together with the string. The returning type and the parameters change according to the method that you're going to be calling. So for simplicity purpose, I'm going to have mine as voids, and then the only parameter that I have is a string. So first step is declare a delegate. So now the second step is to set a target method. So this is where we tell these delegates which methods we're gonna call. So for now I don't have any methods, so I'm gonna create a couple of methods right here. Now, if you look at this method signature, it receives a string as a parameter, which is the same here as my delegates, and also has a void returning type, which matches my delegates. So if you want to create a method to be the target of these delegates, then the returning type and the parameter has to match. So to do something here, all I'm going to do is print the parameter that's receiving. Nothing else. Alright, so in order for us to set the target, there are 3 ways for us to do this. Alright, so let's go for the first way to do that. So the first way is like that. So the my delegates, I'm going to put MD here, that's the name of this my delegates, and equals the method that I want to set to. So in this case, I want to set that to do something. So do something it is, and it's giving me an error, and the error is because it's a non-static field. Okay, so I need to put a static right here since this is static as well. Alright, so the first way is to simply set that as your target method and you're done. So you can also do this other way here. The other way is, again, you do the my delegates equals new my delegates, and then you put here the method that you want to call. In this case is the do something. And the third way for you to do this these 3 ways here will set the target for a method. Choose the one that you like the most. They're all similar, they all do the same thing. So whichever way you want to do it, it will work. I prefer this method right here just because it's very simple and easy to memorize, but you're free to use any way you want. So I'm going to delete these 2 here, and I'm going to keep this one here only because that's the simplest way and that's the way I like it to be. So now you set a target, And the third step now is to invoke a delegate. So in order for us to invoke a delegate, there are two ways for us to do that. So two ways for us to invoke the delegates. One is by getting the name of the delegates, which is MD, and then simply put the parameter that you want to pass to the delegates. So the parameter that I'm going to pass here for now is going to be banana. So this way here, you're invoking the delegates MD, and this MD delegate is set to do something. Therefore, when you invoke this delegate right here, it will actually call this method because this is what this delegate set to. So this is one way to invoke the delegates, and the other way for us to invoke the delegates is by putting the name of the delegate, then dot invoke, and then whatever you want to pass as a parameter. I'm going to pass potato here. So to invoke the delegate, you can use this method or this method. I prefer this one here only because it's shorter, but you can use whichever way you want. So I'm going to remove this one here, and I'm going to leave the short one only. So now I'm going to run this program, and then once I run this program, it's going to obviously create the delegate, then set the method, and then invoke the delegates. So I'm going to run this program, and then finally prints banana, and banana is printed right here on this method right here. Now to confirm that it's on the method, I'm going to put a string here, and I'm going to run again, and then hopefully we print do something plus banana. So do something and then banana. All right, so that's a very easy thing to do. All right, so now let's take a look on multicasting. So multicasting is when you use one delegate to call more than one method. So here we only have one method, but I'm going to create another method. So this other method is going to be something else. So one method is called do something, the other method is called do something else. Now note that both methods have the same signature. In other words, it's a void returning type and receives one string as a parameter. It has to be the same signature type. You can do different things right here inside the method, and you can call it different if you want to, but the returning type and the parameter has to be the same. Now, it doesn't have to be the same parameter name, but the same data type. So just to change a little bit, I'm going to put S1 here, just to change a little bit. But you can keep it as S or anything else you want. All right, so now that I have two methods, and the two methods have the same signature, now I can start using the multicasting. So the multicasting is when I have one delegate calling other delegates. So here I have a delegate called MD. I'm going to rename this to MD1. And then I'm going to create another delegate called MD2. And the MD2 is going to call the do something else method. So now I have two separate delegates. So I can call one delegate and pass the parameter, let's say apple, and then I'm gonna call the method number 2, and then I'm gonna pass the same parameter. So if I run this program, I'm gonna have the do something method printing apple, and then the do something else method printing apple as well. So now the multicasting comes when I create a third delegate And on these delegates, I can add one delegate. And therefore, if I call the MDX and pass Apple, for example, or I'm going to pass orange just to be different. And then I'm going to delete these two here for now. Or I'm going to just comment it out. So when I call MDX, I'm only calling MD1 actually. And MD1 is calling do something. So when I call these delegates, I'm calling the do something with orange. So hopefully this method is going to be called, and then we're going to see do something and orange. Sure enough, do something and orange. All right, so now the beauty of the multicast is that now I can add another delegate here, and I'm going to add MD2. And by doing so, whenever I invoke this delegate, I'm actually going to invoke two of them at the same time. So this invoke we will actually call MD1 and MD2, and MD1 calls the do something method, MD2 calls the do something else method, and by doing so, we're going to be hopefully seeing these two commands here being executed. So the do something else and the do something will be called. So let's run, and here I have the do something, prints the orange, and then the do something else prints the orange again. All right, so the beauty of this multicast is that I can also change this on the fly. So I can go to the MDX equals MDX minus MD2, for example. So on the fly, I remove one method from the delegates, and if I invoke the MDX again, and this time I'm going to pass pineapple, and then the MDX now does not have the MD2, and the MD2 is the do something. So when I call pineapple, only the MD1 will be called, and the MD1 is do something. So let's take a look. So here's the first time I invoked. So it called both method, and then the second time I invoked, it only called the do something method because it got extracted. So you can add and remove your delegates on the fly anytime you want throughout your code. So this is the long way to do that, and you can also subtract by putting a minus equals. So this is the short way for us to subtract, and this will do exactly the same thing. So the first invoke, you called both of them. The second invoke, you only call one of the methods. And if you want to, you can call the same method multiple times, and this will work just as fine. So it calls the same method multiple times. All right, the next topic I want to talk about is to pass the delegates as a parameter. To pass the delegates as a parameter, I want to make this project a little bit more complex. So I'm going to clean up this file right here. And instead of having the code here, I'm going to create a second class. So add a class. And this class is going to be class my delegate tests. I'm going to add, and here in this class, I need those 3 steps again. And remember, step number 1 is to create the delegates. Step number 2 is to set the method, and step number 3 is to invoke. So I'm going to create the delegate, public delegate void my delegates, and the same thing here is going to be a string str. And then here on the class my delegate, I need a method that I can use to call and then do the assignments and whatnot. So for the assignment, I'm going to do on a constructor, but you can do this in any other method. So this is the constructor, and inside the constructor, I'm going to assign the delegates. So my delegate tests, my delegate equals, I need a method to call. So I do not have a method, but I'm going to pretend the method is there, and I'm gonna call the method anyway. So do something. And then because this method here does not exist, I have this red squiggly. So I'm gonna hover over and then show potential fixes. And then I'm gonna generate the method do something. Now I do that just to save me some time of typing. You can actually type this if you want to, but I just want to save some time, and I want Visual Studio to do that for me. So here I'm going to just print the string that's passing as a parameter, and also I'm going to print the name of the method here. So this method just receives the parameter and prints it. All right, so this is no different than we did before. The only difference is that now it's on a class instead of being here on the main program. So because of that, I'm going to instantiate the myDelegate class. All right, and with that, once I call the constructor, then it calls this constructor here and does the assignment for me. So that's great. Now, just for testing purpose, we could right here invoke the delegates also on the constructor, and the delegate would do something for us, right? In this case is actual do something. MD, and then I'm gonna pass a string right here. The string is going to be Seattle. So when I run this code, the constructor is going to assign my delegates, and also it's going to invoke the delegates. And then when invokes and calls this method right here and prints this thing. So I'm gonna run this real quick, and then sure enough it does Seattle and something. So I do not want to invoke here on this constructor. I actually want to create a method for that. You're free to do any way you want to do it, but I just want to show you how to create a method to do this. So right here from my program, I'm going to use the object and dots, and then I'm going to call something that's not there. Okay, I'm going to call a method that doesn't exist. And the method is do all. So the do all method does not exist. So if I come here to the myDelegate test, the do all method does not exist, and because of that it gives this red squiggly. So hover over, show potential fixes, and then generate the method. So once I do that, it generates the method for me. I love it. Now I'm gonna right click and go to implementation, and then here is the method the Visual Studio created for me. So this method here is where I want to invoke the delegates. But there's a problem here, and the problem is that this method cannot see what you created on the constructor, because this assignment was created only inside the constructor. So to solve this problem, you can create the assignment outside the constructor, and then just do the assignments inside the constructor. And now this method can see the delegates, and this delegates is assigned inside the constructor. So finally, if I run this program, I can see that it runs and it doesn't do something. All right, but again, just like I mentioned before, this is just a little bit more complicated, but it's no different than what we did before. Now, the beauty comes when I start passing this delegate as a parameter to another method. So now I'm going to create another method, and I'm going to pass the MD as a parameter. So instead of invoking here, I'm going to call a method, and I'm going to pass the delegate as a parameter. So I'm going to put this dot do x, and I'm going to pass the this dot md as a parameter. So what I'm saying here is this, look it into this class and call the doX method, and look into this class and pass the MD delegate. All right, so the MD delegate is valid, but the doX is not valid. That means I'm going to, again, show potential fixes and generate the method. And then this method gets generated for me. And now I can start typing whatever I want to type here. And now finally here, I can invoke the delegate, and I'm going to pass banana. Now, I know this is a little complicated right here, so let's do a review on what's happening here. So from the program, I instantiate an object, and then I call a method called doAll. Now, when you instantiate a method, this thing here calls the constructor of the class. So the constructor of the class does the assignment. So when you create the object, it already creates the delegates, and then the constructor creates the assignments. So now we have the delegates and the assignments. And then finally, when you call the doAll method, you come here, and then this doAll method is passing the delegates as a parameter to another method. So this is one important feature of the delegate. You can pass that thing as a parameter to another method. So in this case here, I'm passing this delegate to this method, and then this method is invoking and calling the banana. So I'm going to run this program, and then sure enough, it gets printed right here. Now, this method is just calling a different method inside this program, but you could, if you wanted, to create another class and pass that as another class. So let's take a look on that. I'm going to create a third class now. So I'm going to create another class. And then here, instead of passing this delegate to this method, I'm going to actually call a method into the another class. So first I'm going to create a object type another class. And now I'm going to call a method on another class. And I'm going to pass the this.md, which is the delegate, to another class method. Now note that the another class doesn't have any method whatsoever. I can either type here manually and create it, or I can use that trick to call a method that doesn't exist. I'm going to hover over and then show potential fixes, and then generate a method. And then once I click on generate a method, the red squiggly is gone. And if I go to another class, the new method is generated for me here. And here, all I want to do is invoke that delegate. And this delegate here is on the original class. Now, it might as well be in any class that you want. It doesn't matter. The whole point here is that this class is receiving the delegates, and this method can invoke the delegates, and no matter where the delegate is, that method will be executed, because all it's doing is passing the address of the delegates, and no matter where the address is, if it's accessible, it will be printed. So this is another class, dot, do this, and I'm gonna pass Kiwi as well. So this class will invoke the myDelegates, and this delegates is pointing to do something, and the do something should print do something plus all this string right here. All right, so let's run this program, and sure enough, the do something method prints the string that another class is passing when it invokes. All right, so this was a little complicated, so I'm gonna run over real quick here as a recap of what I did. So first I create a object, and then this object here will call the constructor, and the constructor will do the assignments. When you create the class, it will create the delegates, and then when you call the constructor, it will do the assignment. And then after that, you call the doAll method, and the doAll method simply instantiates another class's object and then calls a do this method on that class, but passing this delegates as a parameter. So when you go to do this method, the do this method receives the delegates as a parameter and then invokes the delegates and passes this string here. And because this delegate is assigned to the do something method, and then it calls the do something method, and then the do something method simply prints the do something plus the string that the do this method is passing. And that's the reason why it prints the do something and also the other string. So in summary for this whole video here, the whole point that I'm trying to pass to you is that in order for us to do delegates, you need the 3 steps. So one is to create the delegates, step number 2 is to assign, and then step number 3 is to invoke. The 2 features that I want to take from this video here, also from the delegates, is the multicast, which is you can call more than one method if you want to. You can also add and subtract those methods on the fly. And also the last thing that I want you to take from this video is that you can pass the delegates as a parameter to either another method or to another class. And no matter where you pass it, that class or that method will be able to invoke the delegates because you're passing that delegate as an address, as a reference. All right, so I hope this video was not too complicated. Thanks for watching this video. This is easy and you can do it.